Well, welcome those of you who are joining us tonight. This is the Traverse Area District Library, where we do some Zoom programming. Most of our programs can be found at TADL.org/events. And we try to record most of our programs, and you can find them on our YouTube channel, TADL Not Just Books. Tonight we have Alana, who works with, or who is a member of AmeriCorps. And on behalf of the American Red Cross, she will be talking to us about home fires and how to prepare yourself if the unfortunate disaster ever hits your household. Welcome, Alana. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting us several times this month for National Preparedness Month.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just shared the screen, so you should be able to share your screen if you need to.
Okay, so I will do that. You'll have to excuse me if I struggle at all. All right, does everything look good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm so happy to speak with all of you tonight about how we can prepare for home fires. And before we talk about home fires, I'm going to share some general preparedness that the Red Cross likes to advise for all disasters that happen. So these are things that you can apply to home fires and other disasters as well. So first, to start out, let's talk about disasters. So first, odds are that disaster will strike. The fact is that disasters happen no matter what, and they happen often with little or no warning, anywhere and at any time. They can affect any community, and it's a disaster if normal response systems are overwhelmed, people are hurt, or property is damaged and destroyed. So every year, communities across the United States face disasters, and home fires in particular impact thousands of households every year. So in Michigan, we don't face all of these hazards that we have listed on this slide, but it's a good idea to keep them in mind, especially if you vacation or spend a significant amount of time in a different state that might face hurricanes or tornadoes or anything else that doesn't apply to Michigan. But in Michigan, we basically have home fires, tornadoes, thunderstorms, wildfires, floods, extreme heat, and of course, snowstorms. And we can even add pandemics, I guess, to this list. It's not on there, but it fits all those criteria we just talked about. And today, like I said, we're going to talk about home fires, which happens to be the most common disaster nationwide and the one that the Red Cross responds to most frequently. But to begin, we'll talk about just some general preparedness. In any of the disasters we just talked about, a lot of people assume that someone else will be there to help them. However, resources just aren't available to support everyone immediately in the event of a disaster. First responders, disaster organizations like the Red Cross, government agencies, and hospital rooms are doing their best, but they're staffed and prepared for normal day-to-day operations, and that makes resources incredibly limited during a disaster. I'm sure we have all seen that in our day-to-day lives recently. And so the truth is, we have to depend on ourselves first, because roads may be impassable, utilities could be shut off, hospitals and first responders could be totally overwhelmed, and banks, grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies, schools, and even your workplace may be closed for multiple days on end. So you have to be prepared to help yourself, your household, your neighbors, and older adults who might need extra assistance on your own before you receive assistance from anywhere else. And doing this, preparing in advance, helps everyone stay safer, adapt to challenges much more easily, and then recover much more quickly after the disaster is over. So the Red Cross has split this preparation into 3 easy steps, which are Get a kit, make a plan, and be informed. Really easy. So get a kit. You're going to gather up the supplies you'll need if you ever need to evacuate your home. Make a plan. You just need to identify the steps that you'll take to respond to specific disasters that are common in your area, and be informed. You want to learn how you'll get information if a disaster occurs and what different resources are available in your specific community. So now let's talk about these just a little bit more in depth. So our first step was to get a kit. The Red Cross recommends you have at least 2 of these kits. The first one is a household kit, which we recommend you have supplies for 3 days, but 2 weeks is even better to assemble. And you can leave this kit inside of your house. It might be like a box or a bin, something like that. And then we recommend you have a go bag, which is a mobile version of this same kit. Again, supplies for about 3 days and not too heavy because this is going to be more like a backpack or something portable, maybe like a duffel bag. And it's for if you need to evacuate your house quickly. Also, a great idea to consider a kit like this for your vehicle. And you can also customize it for specific, vehicle emergencies that could happen, such as being stuck in the snow, for example. And what's going to go inside of each of these kits is essential supplies for each member of your household. And then you want to customize it for personal health or medical needs, pets, and disasters that are common to your area. And we want to make sure we're keeping these supplies fresh. We want to replace items every 6 months, so we're not using anything that's expired or anything like that. This might sound kind of daunting, but you just want to think about what you use on a daily basis and how you would need those resources if they were limited or not available. So you can see some examples here on the slide, just very basic things like non-perishable food, water, flashlights, a first aid kit, and some medication. One of the most important things is water. You might need a lot more water than you think. We recommend that you have at least 1 gallon of water per person per day. And that's half for drinking and half for sanitation purposes, because you want to keep in mind that your utilities could be shut off in the event of an emergency. Often, you probably already have these supplies in your house, so you don't have to go out and buy them new. This doesn't have to be an expensive thing. You just need to gather them and put them in one place, which I know you'll all do after this presentation, now that you know. Here's some other ideas as far as kit supplies. I know this is a lot of words on this slide, but things like batteries, especially for your phones, those flashlights, or if you have any power dependent mobility devices or other assistive technologies are really important. Your medications and medical items, sanitation, personal hygiene items, copies of personal documents such as medical information, proof of your address, passports, birth certificates, and insurance policy information. Just a note on insurance, the Red Cross often helps people who don't have any insurance whatsoever, and that really makes recovery from your disaster a much more uphill battle than it might have been with insurance. So I would definitely recommend, if you don't have any disaster insurance, something to think about. I would say definitely get it. Other things to put in your kit, though, are photos of loved ones, which can be useful if you're ever separated in a disaster, phone charger or battery for your phone, household member and emergency contact information, extra cash, emergency blankets, maps of the area. If you're like me, maybe maybe all young people, I don't want to assume, but I usually use a map on my phone. So if my phone died, I wouldn't know what to do. So I want to consider a map of the area if you're like me. This is definitely a process that takes a little time, so don't feel too overwhelmed by assembling, this kit. So you can personalize it. Not all these things on this list, they're just general recommendations. Maybe not all of them apply to you. So you want to personalize your kit for your situation. or for your kids if you have kids in your household. And don't forget to make a kit or include stuff in your kit for your pets as well, or your service animals if you have service animals. Things like pet food, water for them, their identification tags, or any other necessary supplies like a leash, for example, should go in your kit as well, so you're ready to evacuate with your pets if necessary. Today we're talking about home fires, so the kit doesn't necessarily apply as much as it does to other disasters, but it's still good to have so that you're prepared if something does happen. All right, so our next step was to make a plan. And different disasters require you to take different actions, which is why the plan is so important. But generally, you want to include how to evacuate your home, where to meet everyone in your household if necessary, where you will stay in the event of an emergency, what you will do if you're asked to shelter in place in your home, how to communicate with everyone during an emergency, and prepare your important records ahead of time for emergency actions. And also make sure you consider members of your household that have access or functional needs, your pets, and your service animals as well. So if you are thinking you yourself are an individual with access or functional needs, you want to prepare a little bit differently. We recommend that you create a personal support network that can help you plan and provide assistance if a disaster happens. And try not to depend on just one person in this network. Try and include a minimum of at least 3 people so that you have multiple directions to go in if a disaster does occur. Then you should complete a personal assessment of your functional abilities and possible needs that you would have during and after a disaster situation. And make sure you practice and update this plan regularly so that it is, useful to you. And like I said, don't forget about your pets as well. Most American Red Cross shelters can't accept pets, unfortunately, due to health and safety concerns. However, service animals are allowed, of course. And so it's a great idea to contact your local emergency management agency so you can get an idea of pet-friendly shelters, just in case you ever did end up in an emergency with your pets. And finally, make sure you review these plans with everyone in your household. It's a great idea to have a plan, but it doesn't really work if you don't include everyone in the household on the plan. All right, and on to our third step, which is be informed. So you want to stay informed about how you'll get information during a disaster. You want to know how your community warns of an incoming disaster. Maybe there's outdoor sirens or smart alerts. We at the Red Cross recommend you have a NOAA battery-powered weather radio or listen to a local station on the radio for updated information. This way, you can always get updated information, even if the power is out for a long period of time. Also good to understand what different weather alerts mean. So watches versus warnings. A watch means there's a potential for a specific type of weather. So you'll want to monitor the weather and the local emergency broadcasts and be ready to take action if conditions worsen. But a warning means a specific type is imminent, or already occurring, so you should take immediate action. Also important is to follow instructions from authorities. So, for example, if we're talking about home fires, if the fire department tells you not to re-enter the building until they've deemed it safe, please do not re-enter. Or another example, if the police tells you not to drive down a road because it's flooded, do not drive down that road. Please follow instructions from the authorities. We also recommend that you get to know your neighbors because they can be a great resource and tell you what's going on in the community. And we recommend that you know what to do when you're traveling. So if you're going to a different state, a different area, have a good idea of what goes on there. Maybe you're going to an area known for earthquakes, so you should probably research and plan ahead so that you know what to do when all the shaking starts and after it stops. And down at the bottom there on this slide, I have emergency contact cards. So like I was talking about before, if your cell phone is not functioning, you won't be able to access all of your saved phone numbers. So it's a great idea to write down all of those phone numbers so that you can access them if there was an emergency. The Red Cross actually does have an emergency contact card template on their website, which is just www.redcross.org. So if you want to print off that template, you are more than welcome to. But you can just as easily write it down on your own sheet of paper and have it with you for an emergency. Another good idea is to have everyone in your household memorize one person's phone number. That way they at least have one phone number that they can call in the event of an emergency. And another thing to include on these emergency contact cards is somebody who lives outside of your city or outside of your state even, so that there's somebody that you can call who is not, within the potential disaster zone, someone who is easily reached, because sometimes it's really difficult to make a phone call or reach a person who's also inside of the disaster zone. And then one final slide, I'll plug our own Red Cross emergency app, which can provide all of those weather alerts that I just spoke about in a very easy to use app. You can also use the Make a Plan feature and create your own emergency app in it, and it's totally and completely free. So even our own program manager for Northern Michigan uses this app to track different alerts that happen in the community. So she's always updated with our own app. So now we'll transfer into talking about our home fire preparedness. And I have this video. Maybe you've experienced a home fire or know someone who's experienced a home fire, or maybe you don't. So this video will give you a pretty good idea of what experience a home fire is like.
I'm Chloe Malas, an entertainment reporter for CNN based in New York. Shortly after my husband Brian and I met and
Whoops, that was my mistake there.
I'm Chloe Malas, an entertainment reporter for CNN based in New York. Shortly after my husband Brian and I met and got married, we decided that we wanted to move out to the suburbs. We found the perfect little town in southern Westchester, and we found this Tudor home. It was about 100 years old, and we immediately fell in love. We knew that this was the house for us. This is the house where we wanted to have our family and make our memories. When it came to safety, other than having smoke detectors and CO2 detectors, it wasn't something that my husband and I ever talked about. Even after we gave birth to our first child, Leo, again, we never talked about what happens if there's a fire, what happens if there's a natural disaster or a flood. What's our plan? Where do we go? Do we have all of our documents in a safe place? Honestly, it never even crossed our minds. So at this point, living in the home, we had been there for a few years. I had given birth to our second son, Luke, 6 months before. And here we are on a cold January night, and we were sitting in front of the fireplace, my husband and I. It was a second fireplace in the home, one that we had never used in all the years that we had lived in our house. We had just recently paid to get it all fixed up to code, so we thought. And we were in front of this roaring fire, getting warm, about to watch a movie. The kids were sleeping upstairs, and I happened to just look over and see some sticky smoke under one of our big floor lamps in our living room. Still, we were like, look, the smoke detectors aren't going off. This just must be an issue with the fireplace. The smoke's going to go away. Everything's going to be fine. But I had kind of this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. So I asked my husband to go check on the baby's room. But when Brian went up the stairs, he decided to check on our toddler's room. And thank goodness that he did, because when he opened the door, he found Leo coughing and the room filled with smoke from floor to ceiling. And that's when the fire department said, you need to get out of the home right now. I had on no shoes. My kids had on just their pajamas. I didn't know where my dog was. I had no idea where my 2 cats were. It was about 8:30 at night, pitch black, freezing outside in the New York winter. It turned out that there was a fire raging behind our fireplace downstairs. So it was actually charring the wood, charring the walls, and there was a fire behind our children's walls. The fire chief took one look at us and said, "Brian, if you had not gone into your son's room, this would be a very different weekend, that our children would have died from smoke inhalation. I probably would have got up and gone to bed, and I probably would have succumbed to smoke inhalation as well. And then the house obviously would have caught on fire even more, and who knows what would have happened at this point." So that night, when we were allowed to come back inside for a few minutes, I looked around and the ceiling in the kitchen had collapsed due to all the water that the firemen had pumped into the home to put the fire out. I had about several inches of standing water all on the first floor. There was water pouring out of our AC ducts. My children's rooms were completely destroyed because they had to go in there with axes and rip apart the walls so that they could get to the fire. It was so sad. So after insurance sent their investigators out and they figured out what caused the fire, which was a faulty fireplace, we began that process of finding a contractor, starting to rebuild, and there was a lot of paperwork and a lot of inventory and a lot of things that went into this process. But about a year later, we moved back into our house, and it is the home of our dreams. It's completely renovated. It's beautiful. We're so happy. Our son Leo, who still remembers that night, is so happy to be back in his room. Something I'll always remember that the fire chief told me the night of our fire is that you can replace things, you cannot replace people. That has always stuck with me. And, I am so grateful for what I have. And even more so, we were just so grateful just to have each other. That's what mattered. I would encourage every single one of you watching this to please practice your 2-minute escape drill. Test your smoke alarms regularly. And for more information, please go to soundthealarm.org.
All right. So let's talk about some major causes of home fires and home fire fatalities that happened nationwide. So you can see here, cooking equipment is the leading cause of home fires and home fire related injuries, and accounts for 19% of home fire fatalities. And then secondly, we have malfunctioning, which is that 16%, and improper use, which is that 19% of heating, electrical, and lighting equipment together account for 35% of home fire fatalities, while only 5% of home fires are started by smoking materials. These fires are the leading cause of home fire fatalities. But what about Michigan? What about northern Michigan specifically? So I did some research, and here are some stats that pertain to Michigan specifically. Michigan has always trended in the top 10 in home fire fatalities. There was a 21% increase in fire deaths in 2020. So we were spending a lot more time at home during 2020. And already this year, there have been 80 deaths within 69 fires. This was as of August 17th, 2021 in Michigan. And typically the months of November, December, and January are the busiest months in the fire service, which those months will be here very soon. And to be more specific to Grand Traverse County and the surrounding counties in this area, here's a graphic from the Michigan Fire Inspectors Society. And some of the stats that I'd like to highlight from here are that 5 out of 10 counties suffered a fatality, and that 50% of victims are found in the same room as the location of the fire. So we need to know how to prevent fires, first of all, but also how to escape if one does occur in your home. So how can we reduce this fire risk? We can follow some pretty basic tips that can increase safety to a high degree. So One of the easiest things you can do is keep an eye on what you fry, which basically means we want you to stay in the kitchen while you are cooking and never leave any cooking or especially anything burning unattended. Another great thing to do is install fire extinguishers. You don't have to put them in your kitchen, but that's is a place where we experience a lot of burning and fires. So you can install fire extinguishers, and you can take fire extinguisher training even, so you know how to use them properly, usually from your local fire department. Another way we can reduce fire risk is be safe with our electronics. So we have another little saying on there, which is 3 feet away from the heat. We want to keep things away from heat sources so they don't catch fire. Make sure you plug appliances directly into wall outlets, avoid overloading outlets, and use electrical cords properly and safely. All right, and smoking and candles. These are kind of the classic things that we talk about when we talk about fire risk. So failing to properly extinguish smoking materials is the leading cause of residential fires in the United States. So it is something to take very serious. But you can do some very simple things to reduce this risk. So smoke outside and never smoke near medical oxygen. If you do end up smoking indoors, never smoke in bed and never smoke when tired. Make sure you always properly extinguish your cigarettes or any other flames. Use deep and sturdy ashtrays for cigarette butts, and even consider giving them a good douse of water. That's the best way to make sure they're properly extinguished. Always make sure you keep matches and lighters out of children's reach, preferably in some type of locked cabinet or a container where they're out of reach and out of sight of children's hands. And make sure you never leave any candles unattended. All right, on to talking about smoke alarms, which are definitely lifesavers. Research conducted by the National Fire Protection Society shows that having a working smoke alarm cuts the risk of dying in a home fire in half. So they really do save lives. The Red Cross recommends that you install smoke alarms on every level of your home, inside bedrooms, and outside of sleeping areas. We also recommend that they be interconnected if possible. So this way, if one smoke alarm goes off, they all go off. We also recommend that you test each alarm monthly using its test button. And you should be replacing the batteries at least once a year if your if your smoke alarms take batteries. Smoke alarms themselves have to be replaced every 10 years, and this is all smoke alarms, even ones that are hardwired into your wall. This is because the smoke sensor inside of the smoke alarm expires, which if you're interested, you can replace the sensor itself, but most people just replace the whole smoke alarm in that case. And I know it can be tempting to disconnect a smoke alarm if it's gone off because you're cooking something or for some other reason, but please never disable your smoke alarm even temporarily. Most of them have a silence or hush feature on them that you can press if you're getting a nuisance alarm. And if you experience it frequently, just consider actually relocating it to somewhere else in your house so that it can function in a proper way. Older adults and people who are deaf or hard of hearing are particularly at risk during home fires because obviously a standard smoke alarm is not going to work for them. But there are devices that you can use to overcome these challenges. There's ones that use low pitch sound, vibrations, or even strobe lights. And then I will also just say that the Red Cross has their own free smoke alarm installation program, and so do many local fire departments as well, including our fire department here in Traverse City. So if you're having troubles installing smoke alarms or getting smoke alarms, you can either come to the Red Cross or your local fire department. And if you're looking specifically for those alarms for deaf or hard of hearing folks that I just mentioned before, you can often look at Centers for Independent Living. They might have them available, or the Red Cross does provide bed shaker alarms as well. So another important part of preparing in advance for the event of a home fire is your escape routes. We want to make sure we have 2 exits from every room in the house, which you can see in this little diagram here. We want to make sure that those windows and doors that you're using for an escape route actually open and open easily so you could get out as fast as possible. You might want to consider installing escape ladders for 2nd level windows or windows that are just really high up, especially if you have kids in the house. And you want to make sure those escape routes are clutter free. So if you have a lot of stuff in your house, make sure that they're not blocking your escape plan. And then the second part of this escape plan is deciding a safe meeting place. So you want to have a place set up so that everyone in your household goes there and you can, basically take attendance and make sure that everyone made it out of the home fire. It should be a safe distance away from your home, a specific fixed location, and it should be in the front of the home so that you can easily meet with the fire department once they arrive. And this is where you'll call 911 from once you've exited the home. Absolutely do not go back inside of your home in the event of a home fire. It's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. So once you get outside, stay outside. We say there's only about 2 minutes to escape a home fire safely. So once you've made it outside, those minutes have passed. Do not go back inside. And finally, we want to make sure this plan works for everyone in the home. So if necessary, assign evacuation assistance, assess functional abilities and needs, and practice with your pets as well, if possible. I knew one volunteer for the Red Cross who said she had trained her dog to go to the front door if he heard the sound of smoke alarms. So something you could consider doing. In this example on the slide down on the right, the family has a 2-year-old son who needs help if they're going to evacuate the home. So they've assigned mom as the primary person to assist him, and dad is the backup if mom is for some reason away at that time. Smoke alarms don't always wake up children in the event of a home fire, so it's really important to not only practice your plan with your kids, but also assign those assistants if necessary. So more about kids as well is that we want to prepare them, to that extra degree, because they are much more likely than adults, unfortunately, to die in home fires. So we want to practice with them, teach them the dangers of smoke, teach them what smoke alarms sound like, how to open windows if they need to escape out the window, how to use the escape ladder as well for that same purpose, where the safe meeting place is and how to meet there, and teach them how to call 911, which is a useful skill just all around, from a safe place outside of the home. And emphasize that once they get out of the house, not to go back inside of the house. We don't want kids re-entering the house at all either, even if they forgot their favorite toy or potentially the pets are still inside. Kids ask me that all the time when we give them fire safety presentations. We don't want to re-enter the home for any reason. So we recommend here at the Red Cross that you practice your home fire escape plan at least twice a year. And we even recommend that you use a timer so you can meet that 2 minutes to escape. So now we know how to prepare in advance if there were a home fire, but what if you're actually inside of a home fire? What would you do at that time? You want to find a safe escape, as we talked about before. So if smoke or fire blocks one of your way out, you're going to use that second escape route that we discussed. If necessary, you can go through the smoke, but you want to get low, you want to get down closer to the ground if you're going through smoke. That's because smoke rises, so we want to try and get underneath the smoke and not get that smoke inhalation that was mentioned in that video that we watched, which is really no joke. Smoke inhalation is very dangerous. Then you'll meet at your designated safe meeting place, and you'll call 911, of course, so that the fire department arrives. So what if you were in a closed room, though? You would just follow these 3 steps. So you're going to look for smoke coming through the cracks around the door. Before opening the door, you want to feel it with the back of your hand to see if it's hot. If the door is hot, you'll leave it closed and try and use your second way out. If the door is not hot, you can crack it open and look around and potentially go out that way. And if you have no second way out of this particular room, you can't evacuate, you'll want to seal all the cracks around the door, block air vents that are in the room, and call 911 if possible and signal for help in any way that you can. You might just be shouting for help, maybe. And this is another thing that you want to make sure you practice with everyone in your household. Make sure that kids know this information too, so that they know what to do if they are ever in this situation. So that was a lot of information, but here's a very condensed down slide that is just 3 simple steps to be prepared for a home fire. You want to make a home fire escape plan, test your smoke alarms monthly, or get smoke alarms installed if you don't have any smoke alarms, and practice your home fire escape plan twice a year with everyone in your household. If you want a more in-depth home fire safety checklist, the Red Cross does have one available on our website, so you can be even more safe. And then I just have 2 other slides here. One is our National Red Cross phone number. I just want to get that out there because not everyone is aware that they can call the Red Cross if they've experienced a disaster. It doesn't have to be a home fire, but if you do experience a home fire, you can always call the Red Cross. You call this number, you will be connected, to a real person who will then forward your information onto someone in your local area. And then the Red Cross will get in contact with you and will provide you some assistance, whether that's, support with your recovery or helping you, go through the steps that you need to get to the next step. Whatever those types of things that you need, we provide that immediate assistance. So just wanted to inform people about that, something that I do with my volunteering. And then last but not least, I just want to push the rest of our national preparedness presentations here at the library. So we'll be doing Be Red Cross Ready, the same thing we just did today, but we'll be talking not about home fires, but thunderstorms, floods, and then winter storms. And we will also be doing a Prepare with Pedro, which is our kids program for kindergarten through 2nd grade. We'll be teaching them about home fires on the 23rd in the morning. And down at the bottom there, I have an email for our lovely volunteer services coordinator, who, if you're interested in volunteering with the Red Cross here in Northern Michigan, you can send her an email. Also in October at the library, we'll be doing our hands-only CPR program, which I definitely would recommend. But other than that, I'll thank you all for watching. I hope you feel a little bit more prepared than you did before.
Thank you so much. That was definitely chock full of information that I think was a great refresher for many people, and they'll look back on this recording and will be able to set up a plan for their household, because I bet there's a lot of people out there who haven't had a plan, and they always think, just like making a will, it's something that you always push off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that classic, like, well, this will never happen to me. And
Right.
that's why I really like that video, because even if you are safe, you know, I never smoke, or I never plug things into, like, you know, 7 things into one outlet. Of course, like, but sometimes fires just happen and we don't know they're going to happen, but they just do.
Right.
So that's why it's good to always be prepared, you know, just in case.
I forgot to mention, if anyone has any questions, they could type it in the chat. If there are any, we'll wait just a second to see if the person attending has a question. But this was very insightful and full of information. Thank you very much. Your slides were perfect.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, maybe we'll have to come back next year and do it all in person.
Yeah, there you go. Just to
Yeah,
mix it
it's
up a
kind
little
of
bit.
nice. You have, like, you know, you really have people like fill out those contact cards and do a little diagram of their plan, and, you know, a little more hands-on, which people could potentially do with this presentation,
Right.
if they wanted.
Great. Well, I think that's the end of it. I thank you very much for coming, and we will for sure see you next week on Thunderstorms.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Well,
So
thanks a lot.
we definitely had some of those pretty
Yeah, for
recently.
sure.
So
We should have done that 2 weeks ago, but that's not September.
yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy.
Yeah.